Hello, my name is Kelly Collins, and this is my final project presentation. My point of interest for this project was mental health. I wanted to focus on this topic because this past year has been tough on everyone. I've had more conversations about mental health than I ever had before, and wanted to do a little bit more research into it. My expectations for the data I would find were that there would be an overall increase in needs and a decrease in availability. To collect data, I went to data.gov first. I knew I needed unclean data, which is common in government datasets. The site was user-friendly as well, which made it my leading source provider. I used different keywords to help my search and used the filters to find specific data types like CSV, HTML, JSON, etc. In general, I had a lot of excess data, so the first step in most cases was to get rid of what I didn't need. For the API, I scaled it to only mental health articles, and then I created a dictionary with the ones I needed. For the HTML, I used Beautiful Soup to collect the information I needed for the project. I created a list of paragraphs I wanted to using tags, and then used regex to scrape what data I wanted. I then transferred the information into a dictionary, with the key being the names of the graph that this data represented. For the CSV, there was a lot of excess data in all the files, so I used string functions like contains to remove data in specific columns and created new data frames with the columns I wanted. I used drop and a to remove empty rows. When handling inconsistencies, I eliminated the null values in the CSV files because having unknown values do not help with analysis, and replacing them with zeros would skew the data. I used drop in a to eliminate the null values since I could see the empty columns in the downloaded dataset. I removed duplicate information and irrelevant information using string functions like contains or removing a column. My topic is mental health, and some of the data was about cancer or other unrelated information that would not help with my analysis. The original dataset was around 273,000 kilobytes, and by eliminating duplicate and unnecessary data, the new data set is around 26 kilobytes, which is a much more manageable amount. We also don't want to double count a data value in analysis. I removed the additional data value types to have a standard data type. There are originally 3 different data value types, but by using string contains, I narrowed it down to 1 data type. This will allow me to make my analysis without having to cross-reference data types. I made sure each column had a uniform data type, whether it be a string or a float. This allowed me to know exactly what I was working with before I try to use incompatible data. I created a column for the confidence interval in the main CSV file by creating a new column and combining 2 previous columns to mirror data in my other CSV files. This will help me later on to have a uniform system in all the files when doing analysis. I use different aggregate functions like mean, minimum, maximum, standard deviation, and describe to find and manipulate my data for the data analysis. I paired the aggregate function with the group by function to analyze the data. Mostly used pandas for analysis as well. For some of my insights, I compared them to data from the HTML file and some from the same file. I had access to 2011 to 2020 data to make conclusions and develop insights. For the 2018 to 2020, I used the HTML file and the CSV files to find an increase in mental health services. I compared Georgia stats to national stats from the same CSV files, and I found this data by manipulating the dataset to find the specific values. When I discussed depression stats, I also included the articles relevant to it. The visuals I created were a line graph, a box plot, and a scatter plot to support or further develop insights. Visual 1 helped Insight 1, while Graphic 2 gave us more data for Insight 4 than we originally had. I used Matplotlib to create my visuals. For the overall results, most of the proportions had effective means that represented, at times, close to 40% of the survey. There was a general increase when comparing across times with the visualizations of helping support and illustrate the insights. The conclusions were that there were an increase in mental health needs in 2020. There was also an increase of people needing help but not getting it or not able to access said service. But there was an increase of people receiving support. There was a wide range between the minimums and maximums in some of the data as well, so the mental health needs and services that had the variability I expected it to have. That's all I have. Thank you for listening.